it's very vulnerable to be an immigrant, and you're in a place you're not familiar with. Every time you move to a new place, and this is what has been part of our story, is just like being an immigrant in different countries. There was a big thing about moving here where, she was going to stop being an immigrant and I was going to become an immigrant from scratch again. And I think there's a part of that is scary and is difficult to discuss. And we had to talk a lot about that. Hey, I'm gonna have to learn a new language while you're gonna be speaking your mother tongue. That's tough. Very hard for me to find jobs where people might not take English speaking things. And we even had a period where we were really hoping for me and both of us to maybe find jobs here locally, right? We ended up going in a very different direction with Podvision, which I'm happy with. It almost feels like this island that's not quite Romania, which has its advantages and disadvantages, but that's definitely part of the experience here, where when I go out there and I get to practice my Romanian, I'm in Romania. But when I'm in here and I'm at work and I'm doing my 9 to 5, am I really in Romania? It's sort of this very strange thing, but in general, I love it.
For me, actually, that's a really important point, I would say, because we speak English to each other. I mean, he's learned Romanian, like he said, and he's really learned it and he's good at it. And I'm learning French too. So we're trying to speak
And
each
she's
other's
really good
native
at it.
languages. In French. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Merci. But it's true that, it's not like we are having a full Romanian experience. So for me, it's kind of a typical thing of an immigrant as well, right? After you've been away, you've lived in a different country, you've kind of like assimilated so many things, and you move back home and you continue having this sense of just feeling lost a little bit and not belonging and all of that. And I think at this point, I just accepted it and I'm actually fine with it. But it comes in different situations, right? Like maybe I'm not as comfortable speaking Romanian sometimes as I am speaking English. But when it comes to certain situations or certain jokes, I am more comfortable in Romanian. So it's not just because I moved back home now. Okay, I'm settled right back in and I feel 100% Romanian. I still will definitely always have that immigrant experience as part of myself. And we're already talking about where the next destination could be. I think also once you catch this virus kind of thing, you can't really get rid of it. You just always want to keep moving. But this time, not so much as Romania is not doing it for us, but more so as, okay, what else can we get somewhere else? Because we've very quickly learned that no matter where you go, right? In China, in the States, in Romania, you're not going to get a perfect country. So it's just a matter of picking and choosing and making the best of your experience.
Welcome back to Arrivals. Today marks a special milestone for the show because I'm not just interviewing one guest, I'm interviewing a team and an amazing couple. Julian and Andrea are the co-founders of Podvision, a strategy and production agency that helps podcasters find their voice. Julian is the creative engine with a background in film and tech, while Andrea is the audience expert and the founder of Eurowaves, the top newsletter for European podcasting. But their story actually started in China, where they met as teenagers far from their homes. Julian is originally from Madagascar and Andrea is from Romania. They have navigated life as immigrants in the US and now in Bucharest, where they're building a business that is as international as they are. In this episode, we're diving into not only their stories as immigrants, and the reality of what it's like to move back home. We'll also talk about the challenges and the joy of starting a business together as a couple and how they help storytellers reach audiences across borders. Whether you're a creator yourself or you just love a good love story, I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Julian and Andrea, thank you so much for your time again. I've been very excited to talk to you both.
Thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to be here. And we're fans of your show. We've talked about it a little bit internally. So now we're, fangirling to be guests.
And I'm fan of all of your work. And that's how we met. You both have this amazing company, Podvision, and that's actually where I would love to start. But before that, I would love if each of you could introduce yourself to someone that doesn't know you and just who you are.
All right, I can get it started. My name is Andrea. I'm originally from Romania. We lived, which we'll talk about, in the States for 5 years. in China for another 2 years. And we've been back in, I've been back in Romania, and he's been in Romania now for 3 years. It's going to be a little bit of a mix, so bear with us as we're talking through this. In terms of what we do, so my background is in communications and in marketing, but I absolutely fell in love with podcasting around 2018, I would say, when I listened to a podcast called The Heart, which I recommend to anyone to listen to it, because it just made me think, this is possible in audio, and this is called a podcast, right? Because we're so used to interviews, to conversations, but just that the narrative of it, the sound design, all of that really drew me in and absolutely fascinated me. So I started producing podcasts a little bit. I was self-taught in that sense. And then I slowly got into marketing, working with Tink Media. And we're going to talk a little bit about it together, of how Podvision came to be. But essentially, we just realized that what we're doing is really, we complement each other so well in so many ways. And it just naturally happened. And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Mariana. Very nice to be here. Thank you for having us. It's kind of hard to describe myself a lot of the times because I kind of end up doing way too much. That's always been sort of this jack of all trades type of situation where I tend to follow passion and just do different types of mediums. But as far as what we're doing right now, I'm the co-founder of Podvision. With the stuff I do tends to be more so on the production side. I make the podcast that we have, I edit them, I produce them, I mix the audio, I work on the branding, I work on the video, I work on the distribution. There's just a lot that comes from that. And I think that comes from the fact that coming into podcasting, I started really working in the industry maybe in 2020. Coming into it, I was coming from a film background. That's what I had studied. That's a lot of the projects I had taken on so far as a freelancer. So that film and design background that I had sort of really lended itself well to learning podcasting, but learning it from this sort of upcoming idea of video podcast that we're all doing now. I'm originally from Madagascar, going back a little bit. Yeah, we met in China, so spent a couple of years there. And I went to college in the United States, in Bennington, in Vermont. And yeah, studied computer science and creative fields. And sort of what we're working on a lot right now is doing a lot of creative strategy and direction for the podcast we work with. Like we're sort of stepped away from just, hey, I'll edit this podcast for you or I'll market this podcast for you, but actually building the strategy behind the things that we end up doing for them.
Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons why we started working together, because we were working on these projects kind of individually, right? Like him producing for a little bit, me marketing for a few months, and being able to become an actual partner for a podcast long term is so satisfying. And I'll say, which I think you would say about me as well, he's being very humble right now about what he does. He's extremely, extremely talented in everything that has to do with creativity, but also technology, which he's always been passionate about. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very passionate about that stuff.
Yes, I can tell. And I want to go deeper in how you both complement each other in the work. But first I want to start with, where is Podvision right now? Not only in terms of the goal, but of all the work that you're doing, not only in podcasting. I know you have a huge newsletter as well. Mm-hmm. So what is the superpower of your company right now?
Yeah. It's really funny you asked that because it's been moving so fast, I would say, for us at Podvision. We decided to embark on the journey maybe a year and a half ago now, and things have just been coming our way as far as these very natural stepping points. You know, we started off being like, okay, this is going to be an agency. We have no idea what it's going to look like, but I think we've gotten to a point where essentially stepping in as partners for most of the shows we work with. We're like essentially co-owners almost of the podcast. They're the owners for everything, but when it comes to the production, to the ideas behind it, to the strategy, we're like able to take it to heart that our sort of reputation and our labor of love is at stake when it comes to these shows. And so one big thing right now where Podvision is at is that we're working with a lot of our clients in the US, but we also started working with clients in Europe or in Canada here and there, which has been really nice that we're able to from our international perspective, also work with more international clients. And I think there's also this idea that we're able to start bringing on more talent like across the world. And it's a journey as well, trying to figure out like what's the right fit, how to do it. But the fact that right now we're able to also work with even people here locally in Romania has been pretty nice.
Yeah. And I'd say a couple more things is for us, it's so important that the podcasters we work with feel that the podcast is true to them, is authentic, first of all, and that they also find joy in the creation of it. Because, Mariana, you have a podcast. We don't for a reason. We know all the work that goes into it. And so having a partner by your side that knows, okay, it's important for this to be authentic, to like really represent you and for us to communicate it through the kind of content, through the format, through the production, and then also through the marketing. And just a lot of the podcasts that we're working with are either launching or looking for a refresh, rebrand kind of thing. But yeah, we've been in the podcasting industry now for a while, enough to know that it's a difficult experience for independent podcasters who we mostly work with. And so we're just trying to be there and become their cheerleaders at the end of the day.
Yes, and you're very good at it. And I only have one call with you guys in that sense. And I know you really go with a mission and try to understand your clients. I'm curious on, of course, there's a lot of cultural differences coming with the clients that you're taking. I can't imagine what it's like in Romania versus someone in the US, for example. How do you handle that with the work, and considering how podcasting is in very different stages? I think Andrea, told you, I maybe want to start episodes in Spanish, but there's the difference in the amount of podcast in Spanish is so different. So, and also coming with that, how do you advise someone to reach a more international audience, considering that not all of us, of course, speak two languages or even have content that has the potential of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of our work, all of our experience so far has been mainly based in the States. So we started working in podcasting while we were there. We kind of continued when we moved here, and that's where we're at right now as well, even though we're expanding internationally too. So we were very tapped in. And I think it's a very interesting discussion too about us as immigrants kind of in the States, right? How that journey started and how we're continuing to develop it in a way that we're not outsiders per se, but we're not as right, like we're not there. So like it's a little difficult having that kind of relationship from afar, but I think we're doing a really great job. And in terms of podcasts, kind of considering how to reach more international audiences, I'm a big advocate for this. I'm the creator of Eurowaves, which is the go-to European podcasting newsletter. Also the only one so far. Hopefully there are going to be a bunch more coming soon. And the whole point for me is really to connect different European countries so that, first of all, we learn from each other, right, from different markets, and not just European countries, but also European with American, American with Asian, Asian with African. Like there's so much diversity in the podcasting markets. And so that's one thing, really paying attention to these trends. And then at the same time, trying to figure out if your content is available in a language that is spoken in other countries, as you mentioned, right? Like Spanish, for example. See how your content could appeal if you want to get to a wide audience. You could also go to, Mexican listeners, but also Spanish listeners. If you want to keep it like Latin only, for example, that would be another thing. And then you'd also have the marketing aspect where you could do cross and, promote each other's podcasts with podcasts that are from different countries again. So it's a really nice way to kind of expand your audience and the reach of your message. At the end of the day, it's one of the things that we learned is there's so many similarities between different cultures. We think that so many things are keeping us apart, but we're actually very, very similar.
That's a really cool thing that she's also being very humble about, honestly. And maybe this is a theme. She is such a good connector and communicator. I think that's always been her, like one of the ways that she functions in the world. Whatever she's doing, she's connecting people, she's connecting with people. She is like deeply caring about what even people across the globe are doing. And it shows up in all of the work that she does. But it also makes it so compelling when she's writing about these things and when she's doing work with people, whether like we're doing work right now with people in the US, even though we moved away from there, even in the way that we're trying to, and we're starting to see really good results in entering the market for podcasting in the UK or in Europe. And I think one of the big challenges that she has hit when it comes to Eurowaves is the fact that even though people have every reason, in theory, every reason to be connected, they don't, because every single country, especially in Europe, and I'm sure this might be true to a great extent in South America, in Africa, in Asia, is like every single one of them is sort of looking within itself, and like they're doing things at the local level, and they're just, even though there's a lot of opportunities out there, they're not looking out for it. And so there's this huge gap, I think, in the podcasting world that she's filling up right now. And she's going to be able to do that more and more with Eurowaves and more projects.
I think this also came from the privilege of us being able to experience other cultures and have that opening to different people and realize that this is a really important thing for life and for work. And second of all, I think it also came from a need of our immigrant experience in the States of not necessarily differentiating ourselves in a strategic way, but more so finding what makes us unique, right? And what we can bring extra to the table, and realizing that a lot of people around me, whether that's in the States or in Romania or somewhere else, are not really thinking outside of their context. Why is that? Let me try to get into that a little bit more and encourage them to do it. So I think it's a combination of things, and definitely has a lot to do with our immigrant experience.
Oh, yes. Well, for me personally, for the mission of this podcast, that perspective that you have is not only from the podcast expertise, but the international expertise is just like invaluable and rare to find. I want to go back a little bit about vision. With entrepreneurship, it can be very hard from the financial point of view. And also, in your case, you started as a couple, and to actually get it going, it's way more complicated than it sounds. So I do want to touch on that and what was the hardest part to make this decision, and together, of course.
I'd say, it was very different depending on where we were in the States, right? So because we had the experience, as Jolene was saying, of living in Vermont and kind of being in the Vermont, New York, New Jersey space as well, versus LA, where we also lived for 1 year. And we didn't get as much time to network or develop ourselves in this way professionally, physically in New York, since the pandemic was going on and, that was limited. But I will say sometimes it felt like it was very easy to communicate with others, right? Depending on where we were in our professional journey as well. Because, for example, when I was already working in an agency for a while, I could feel more confident in talking about different things in the industry and all of that. But before that, maybe I didn't have the credentials. And we were also living in LA, where people can either be really nice or they can be also maybe thinking of, okay, but who are you? You can find all different types of people. And I think the fact that on top of that, we came from different countries, maybe you could tell there's a little bit of an accent, but definitely not enough. Maybe as other people, we worked on it as well. That was an added challenge, absolutely. And I felt it. I was taking notes on my phone after networking events and being like, okay, I shouldn't say I created an NGO, for example, which I have, but I should say I created a nonprofit. Even like small things like that, it would just make my self-doubt and anxieties and all of that kind of ramp up. And so learning how to deal with that. But we have surpassed it for sure, because we've met some wonderful people that weren't necessarily having that mindset of who are you exactly. And we've also persevered a lot. We've, been in that American hustle culture that we also wanted to get away from a little bit. So it's been a little bit of a mixed experience. What do you think?
Yeah, as you were saying that, it reminded me of the fact that I think we, as immigrants in the US and China, wherever we were, and as me still an immigrant here, there's this part about the experience that's just how restless it is. We were essentially moving every 6 months, whether that was just because we were visiting someone, we were trying to find a different opportunity, or trying to do something, while we were in the US, and we didn't know exactly, how long are we staying here? We weren't necessarily planning to spend the rest of our lives there. And so there was really that impulse of like every 6 months, go be somewhere else, meet other people. And I think on one hand, I think there's a really good dynamic that we've always had that has translated into how we run Podvision, which is that we sort of balance this idea that we have to go and seek these opportunities and run and also consider them and like sort of go through them with the care that we really want for the things we do. But two, we started Podvision a year and a half ago, like we said, once we were here in Romania. But actually, sort of, this was the first time we sort of has settled in the same place for over 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, that made a huge difference.
Yeah. And so I think just having settled down, having spent that time to be able to just call a place, feel so comfortable with a place and having processed all of these experiences that we had over the past 5-6 years, that was huge. That just let us take risks a little bit more. In a different way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because you mentioned, Mariana, entrepreneurship is so much about, it can be unstable and there are risks to it and all of that. So that's a very important point, actually, that you bring up, because, yeah, we did feel that sense of security, safety for the first time in a long time while we were here. And we started it even like a couple of years after we moved. It wasn't instant either.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about that instability that you both felt. Why did you feel that while you were in the US, in some way you both felt that you didn't not want to stay there?
Yeah, I think in the US, there's the hustle culture she mentioned. There's the sense of not necessarily belonging. There's definitely a difference. I'm still obviously an immigrant here in Romania. I'm a Black immigrant in a white country with a very small minority of people of color. It's still very much real. I had to adapt to the language, whatever it might be, learning Romanian. But I think even the fact that she's home, I get to be home because we had the time to build our own home, but also I'm close to her family who became my family. There's all of this aspect of it that reinforces this sort of different outlook on life that we just could not get in the US. And the US is really, really far. I think you're from Mexico. That's that's next door in a lot of ways compared to distance. Just creates so many things where you are always away from home. You're always alone in a lot of ways. There's not a ton of diaspora from Madagascar in the US compared to a lot of other countries, for example.
But you did have your cousin there.
I was very lucky to have very close family that was able to show me around, allow that experience to be a lot easier. I think a lot of people didn't necessarily get that definitely influenced my experience there. In ways that, being Malagasy in the US would have been wildly different. And another of us starting Podvision, honestly, I think has to do with the post-pandemic podcasting scene. I think that's something to consider as well. I think getting into podcasting in 2020 made sense because that was the very start of, everyone sort of getting into podcasting, lots of people looking for podcasting support. And that hive lasted 1.5 years, 2 years, and then it definitely came crashing for a lot of people. And I think earlier on, people were looking for support because they had the time to do a lot themselves. And so they were like, I'm looking for an editor. I'm looking for somebody to write these things for me. I'll do the rest. I'll be my own producer, but that's what I'm looking for. And I think there is a shift that you only sort of realize later, that where people went from that to being more so, hey, I'm back at my full-time job. I'm not really, I'm not looking for an editor. I'm actually looking for somebody or some people who are great people who can actually help make the most of my podcast without me being the center of it, besides being in front of the microphone. And so there was a big push for us to start Podvision coming from that. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yes, it seems so long ago, but we forget about how that era changed everything. And I wanna shift a little bit in how living in Romania right now is for you both, because like you mentioned, it's very different for you, Julian, than it is for you, Andrea. I've never been, so I'm curious of how you describe it. You, Andrea, as your hometown, and now living there again. And for you, Julian, what do you feel like, as you mentioned, that the diversity is tough? You have your family there as well, but you're immigrated again.
I mean, for me, it's a mixed back for sure. But I think it's important to go to the moment where we kind of made the decision to move to Romania, because we went back and forth a lot. I had gotten into a master's at Columbia. I was so excited for that, but also didn't want to get alone and get into that whole loop. And so we explored different options. We said, maybe I could get a job at a company so that I could get the visa. Maybe, I mean, there was so much related to just our status and being worried about that, right? And like that being a decisive factor. I think if it hadn't been a decisive factor, we might have honestly stayed in the States for a few more years at least. But it wasn't possible. And again, I didn't want to kind of sacrifice my financial well-being and put myself in all that debt just to stay in a country, right? So we said, okay, Romania seems to be a good option. We're going to go to Europe. I'm going to go back home. We're going to be with my family. It's going to be that sense of safety, which we talked about, which happened. But I want to say that I did have this feeling of, is this a failure, right? If I'm moving back, because the whole point of me moving away is my family was discussing it since I was little. I just always had this idea of Romania is not worth it for my development. There are not enough opportunities and all of that. So I must move somewhere else and completely live my life somewhere else, right? And so that was at a different time in Romania. And since then, things had changed. But I still couldn't shake away the feeling of this feels like a failure. And I know a lot of people are going to say that. So I had to do a lot of self-talk to just decide that this is absolutely not. It's intentional. It's a decision that we are taking for our well-being, which it was. And it was true that once we moved, I did have to deal with a lot of people who were kind of challenging me in that way. And I also posted my experience on TikTok because I was experimenting with social media and all of that, which was interesting. And I wanted to share my experience. And of course, a lot of people in the comments came and said that. And they were like, oh, you just weren't good enough to stay in the States. It's why would you move back to Romania? Just all of those kinds of comments that you also get on social media, right? From someone behind a keyboard. And I knew it. I knew that would happen, but it didn't shake me again. So I would say that was one of the biggest things for me. And obviously, of course, also supporting Julian a lot in his experience here, moving as a couple, knowing that even though he had visited before, living here was going to be a different experience. And also figuring out how our professional life is going to look like. We were very lucky that as freelancers, we could continue the work we were doing in the States. So that wasn't changed a lot, but you can imagine that it did come with a lot of questions of, right, are we going to have to, find a different job? Are we going to have to get a job here actually? Because this kind of cross-continental collaboration is not going to work. But yeah, how's your experience?
I think Romania has been a really nice country for me to live in. Like we joke often that I like Romania more than she does. Funnily enough. And we were like, hey, we're moving back home for you. No, I've enjoyed a lot more. I was very surprised. Generally, like, it's very beautiful. It's very sunny in general. We've had the same as New York City, New Jersey, Boston sort of blizzard this past few weeks. So I can't speak on it right now, but I'm always surprised at just how beautiful it can be, how sunny it always is for like an Eastern European country. And the experience here is just like everybody speaks English. People have a lot of energy. People are very excited, especially in the city, to do things, explore opportunities, try new things. The culture, the food is awesome. I think it's really, and just being welcomed by her family has been so interesting to see them embrace me so much that it actually did make me feel like, hey, this is actually not as scary as I thought it would be. It's very vulnerable to be an immigrant, and you're in a place you're not familiar with. Every time you move to a new place, and this is has been part of our story, is just like being an immigrant in different countries. There was a big thing about moving here where, she was going to stop being an immigrant and I was going to become an immigrant from scratch again. And I think there's a part of that is scary and is difficult to discuss, and we had to talk a lot about that. Hey, I'm gonna have to learn a new language while you're gonna be speaking your mother tongue. That's tough. Very hard for me to find jobs where people might not take English speaking things. And we even had a period where we were really hoping for me and both of us to maybe find jobs here locally, right? Coming off of that whole podcasting crash as we were talking earlier. That didn't end up happening. We ended up going in a very different direction with Podvision, which I'm happy with. But yeah, I think that was some of the things that were happening at the start, but the fact that we kept going with podcasting, which is very much a like huge in the US and huge in English speaking countries versus other languages, that on a professional level and within our home, it almost feels like this island that's not quite Romania, which has its advantages and disadvantages. But that's definitely part of the experience here, where when I go out there and I get to practice my Romanian, I'm in Romania. But when I'm in here and I'm at work and I'm doing my 9 to 5, am I really in Romania? It's sort of this very strange thing. But in general, I love it.
Yeah, for me too,
Yeah.
actually. That's a really important point, I would say, because we speak English to each other. I mean, he's learned Romanian, like he said, and he's really learned it and he's good at it. And I'm learning French too. So we're trying to speak
And
each
she's
other's
really good
native
at it.
languages. In French. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Merci. But it's true that, it's not like we are having a full Romanian experience. So for me, it's kind of a typical thing of an immigrant as well, right? After you've been away, you've lived in a different country, you've kind of like assimilated so many things, and you move back home and you continue having this sense of just feeling lost a little bit and not belonging and all of that. And I think at this point, I just accepted it and I'm actually fine with it. But it definitely comes in different situations, right? Like maybe I'm not as comfortable speaking Romanian sometimes as I am speaking English. But when it comes to certain situations or certain jokes, I am more comfortable in Romanian. So it's not just because I moved back home now. Okay, I'm settled right back in and I feel 100% Romanian. I still will definitely always have that immigrant experience as part of myself. And I mean, we're already talking about where the next destination could be. I think also once you catch this virus kind of thing, you can't really get rid of it. You just always want to keep moving and experience different things. But this time, not so much as Romania is not doing it for us, but more so as, okay, what else can we get somewhere else? Because we've very quickly learned that no matter where you go, right? In China, in the States, in Romania, you're not going to get a perfect country. So it's just a matter of picking and choosing and making the best of your experience.
Yes, I love that. And that you want to keep moving together.
Yeah.
Kendra, I relate to what you're saying because now I'm in my home country. A lot of the things that I do that I don't even realize myself from my own childhood and growing up here come back in your own language. That Julia, you're still adapting to Romanian in the language and seeing all of that must also be a different way to look at Andrea. Why did you both immigrated for the first time? What was the decision maker for each of you before you even met?
Coming from Madagascar, I grew up in a space where I was sort of always destined to be an immigrant. I was always meant to be. I was sent from when I was a very small kid into the French system, the French school system, with the explicit goal that I would go to a French university in France. I grew up, this was part of my sort of DNA that I was supposed to do. And China was actually like a curveball at the very end where all of a sudden I had this opportunity in front of me. UWC, that was a great school system that was completely different. It was going to be in a language I did not speak at the time. I did not speak in English at all, like the way that we do right now. And it was very scary. But the reason for my immigrating was the same. It was to seek opportunity for studies and potential work in the future. And so I ended up going to China instead. I think there's a lot of boxes we can be put in very easily as immigrants, especially in the context of our families, in the context of our ambitions. And I think I've definitely been put in a lot of ways. And a lot of ways I'm trying to figure out if I want to stay in this box and how much of away from it I want to stay. But just sort of like that first son immigrant who has the responsibility now to come back and either offer more opportunities for my siblings and my family or support my parents very early on in my life. And I think all of those things are part of me, and they're part of sort of this journey of like, why would I go to what seemed at the time like a very strange and a very distant experience of going to China, and I had been primed for many, many years to go to France. You're going to be learning there, you're going to get a job there, you're going to maybe live there, and that's it. And we already spoke French. It was very easy transition. And to now go and switch languages, switch worlds, and do all of those things was very scary. Now, obviously, looking back, China was like the best decision I could have done at the time. I can tell you that the rumors were false from everything that I was told up until that point. China is one of the best countries I could have lived at that time. This was pre-COVID as well. And so it was just such a warm place and welcoming place for all types of immigrants, all types of foreigners at the time. And it was just such an enriching experience, I would say, as far as changing the way that I navigate the world. I wouldn't be doing podcasting today if I hadn't gone to China, for example. That's a very clear thing.
And why is that?
That is because I was always primed for sciences. I was a science major, and I was supposed to simply become like a civil engineer or like a physics engineer. That was what I was about to do. And I was fairly good at it. I enjoyed it. But I think what's more key is I just didn't even believe at that point that I could make a career in something like podcasting. I did not know of it. And I think even more than that, I did not believe in it. I was the type of a teenager who was playing around with cameras, making short films in my backyard, that type of thing, right? I always loved this type of stuff, but I was not really in an environment where I could believe that this could be a career. And I don't know how, maybe at the time in like places in Central America, if that was sort of similar, whether like being super creative could be like a perfect job for people versus being in the sciences or being a doctor. But that vision was shattered in China, and that's where that flip happened for me.
How old were you when you moved to China, Julian?
I was only 17, 18 at the time. Yeah.
By yourself?
Yes, by myself. That was my first like really long international flight. It was very strange to arrive there.
It was your first international flight, no?
It was my first international flight, yes.
Wow.
And it was very scary. I was disoriented, but I think I started loving it on day one once I got there.
What part of China did you move first?
We went to Changshu, is the city. We stayed there. I stayed there the entire 2 years I was there. Changshu is a smaller city of 10 million people near Shanghai, 3 hours away from Shanghai.
And to be the first international flight, that must have been a culture shock in so many ways.
It really was. Not only did I not speak English comfortably, but let alone Chinese that I was trying to decipher at the time.
And your family to this day?
They're still in Madagascar. Yeah. They're still there. We're hoping for them to visit soon, but they haven't left. And that is also one part of my immigrant experience, honestly, which is the fact that for all of these milestones that I've had in my life, whether that was myself or together, they haven't been able to be present with me just because of the sheer amount of distance and like the realities of this world of being so far away. I mean, this is something I've heard of people in like South Africa or like in like Peru, where flights are just like in Madagascar, $2,000, $3,000 if you want to go anywhere. And to be able to bring your family or for your family to come to like something like graduation or something like even a wedding is really, really hard.
Yes, absolutely. It's way more complicated than...
Yeah.
We miss a lot of stuff from family and friends.
Yeah.
Overall.
Yeah, really do. In some way, it fuels what you want, what you're doing with your life, your entrepreneurship and whatnot. It fuels it a little bit. But on the other hand, it's just something that adds some sorrow to your life.
Yeah. But also we can say in a cliche way, some beauty because your life is in so many places. Also, this is a cultural thing that definitely not for him, which is so funny, all the like cultural differences we have, but interrupting is so common for Romanians. He was baffled when he saw that. We talk over each other all the time. We're just showing enthusiasm. We can still hear each other. And for them, I mean, I was so shocked when I saw them all at the table, taking turns speaking. I mean, for me, it was pretty easy, right? Because I just have to sit there and like wait for my turn, maybe. But he just very overwhelmed.
Yeah,
If you can relate to this.
Yeah, I do. That's why I'm laughing. So, not all places in Latin America, but in Mexico, like people yell a lot, but if you constantly interrupt someone at the level that Americans, in my experience, interrupt people can be like very sensitive for sure.
Really? Okay, so it's bad, right? You have to wait for your turn.
Not to that extreme, but it is bad. Consider
Okay,
that.
okay. Fascinating. Yeah. It's like being in a couple in that way is so funny, but also like experiencing that as an immigrant because we're interrupting each other. I'm fine with it personally. But when it comes to China, I really like what Julian said about being destined to be an immigrant because, yeah, I mean, me too, for sure. Again, like I said, I was always kind of taught that Romania is not good enough. So I gotta go somewhere else. And my equivalent of France was the UK because a lot of Romanians were going to the UK to study and they were just looking at it as, wow, this is so good. Now, less so, right? But just the Western Europe, let's say, because now going to the UK, it's a whole headache for Europeans. So, and when this opportunity came up for China, I felt like it was too good to pass up and that I had way more to lose if I wasn't taking this opportunity than if I was staying. Right? I mean, I'm going to stay in Romania and what, right? Especially with the kind of mindset I had. And yeah, for me, China was a lovely experience as well. I think it really has to do with the program that we were in, which was very international. And it was set up in a way in which we were very encouraged to explore other cultures and become friends with people from different countries. Like my best friends were from Iraq and Angola, for example, right? And I had never been to those countries or met someone from those countries necessarily. That was an important thing. And definitely Chinese culture too, like Julian said, is lovely, and Chinese history, and just there's so much to see. But at the same time, I will say when I got to the States, I also started learning a lot more about the other side of China that people usually talk more so about, right? Like all the censorship and everything. And realizing that those issues were there. Whereas while we were in that program, we were really not discussing it. It was kind of funded by local governments, so that wouldn't come up necessarily. And I learned a lot of things about, women's experiences in China, things like reproductive rights and all of that. It was a very different side of the coin also, right? Us going all the way to China, from China to the States, very opposing experiences.
Right. And how old were you when you moved?
I was 16.
Oh, wow. So
And
young.
everyone was saying, wow, you're crazy. You're going to China. That's insane by yourself at 16. You're
Yeah.
so brave. And I used to like to say that, oh, I just was not aware of how crazy that is. But at the same time, we also had, like, we were very privileged again to have this scholarship. And it was an amazing campus. I mean, we can't really say that we were there kind of in the hustle culture of the States, for example, in China. No. We were provided for sure. But it's true that it was very far, very different.
Yeah, I'm sure. Also never been to China. Would love to go. Let's talk about starting your relationship a little bit and how you met. And I'm curious to also dig in more in these bicultural differences. I'm also in a bicultural relationship. And I know that, of course, it can be great. And in a lot of ways, you keep learning about each other's cultures, about each other's ways. The interrupting example is great for that. And it can be very difficult, but I imagine, like in your case, you were both in a new situation as you met and discovering something together as well. What was that like?
I mean, yeah, it's very strange. So when we met is a bit of a point of tension sometimes because she had been in China for a year already when I got there. And so this was like my first day, new country, new language, new everything. This is my excuse. So that just the very first meeting is something that is very blurry for me, but very clear for her. Right. And so, just, and I mean, I attribute it to that because I saw 400 faces in 2 days, and I just was trying to like keep up with people, keep up with names, trying to make my way around. I had barely unpacked. And so, that's sort of how we met. But then we did about a year of that program together, and she left for the US first. and I went and joined her. Then we went to the same college, essentially, up in Vermont. Spent the whole 4 years there. And then we moved to LA. We had sort of our experiences there of trying to figure out, like, is this industry that's kind of local in LA made for us? Because we loved the place. We really loved just the lifestyle that we were having there, the people that we were meeting. It was just a very different
How
vibe.
diverse it is.
How diverse it is compared to like a very small town up in Vermont. And yeah, it was a wonderful experience on a personal level, but I think we were both trying to figure out, what does working there and building a career there look like? And I mean, one of the realizations was just that, yeah, even if we were working really hard, Hollywood and perhaps like a lot of the industries locally in LA are sort of ones where you do need to have a connection, personal connection. And as an immigrant there, that's not something you really have.
Or more time.
More time, I think, is also a huge part of this as well. Yeah, because we were on visas. This was not really an option for us to stay for that much longer.
Yeah, to go back a little bit to what you said earlier, Mariana, I think it's such an important point you made, that we met as we were both experiencing something new, right? Because I'm thinking of intercultural relationships that, I mean, maybe we would have met here in Romania. I'm very comfortable here. I've never been an immigrant. I've never lived anywhere else. And I meet Julian. That's going to make for a different, very different kind of even instant connection in how we understand each other and everything. So I think that was key. And to be honest, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like that was the reason why we have acted as a team from the get-go, right? Every move that we made, the decision to move to LA, the decision to move to Romania, the decision to start a company, now how we are running Podvision, we have just always seen each other as a team, and we've always gone through these experiences either as hardships of being an immigrant or all the excitement of I'm in a new place and there's so many things to do and we're just all experiencing them for the first time, you know. We lived through that together. Yeah, and so I think that was very important. And also experiencing each other's cultures happened, like, of course, through each other, but also we visited each other's countries not too far apart time-wise, right? So I visited Madagascar in 2019 and he visited Romania in 2020. And from the get-go, we had that kind of experience. It went from those little things like the language. Well, he could communicate with my family because they speak English, but now it's a whole different type of communication as they're speaking Romanian. I couldn't really communicate with his family since they don't speak English. I was trying. I did my Duolingo in French, but that was a little difficult. And I would say it was overwhelming for sure, but also exciting. And there are still moments, I think, when it hits me at least, especially because now we're in Romania in a space that's so familiar to me. But it hits me that the fact that we come from such different countries is going to be a thing for our whole life. Our whole relationship is going to influence all of our decisions, where we move, how difficult it's going to be when we have a family, if we decide to have children. Because the culture is so much I wouldn't say that's an issue absolutely at all. We enjoy each other's customs so much, each other's music. We're so immersed. And personally, like, I love to say all the time, I love Malagasy people. I love Malagasy culture. I want to learn Malagasy one day. We're going to live there someday too. So that is not an issue at all. It's something that enriches our life. But I think the distance of our countries is just, yeah, and our families, the distance of our families as well, is something that we're always going to have to grapple with. And sometimes it really hits you.
Absolutely.
I just want to add to that. When we met, we knew nothing about each other's country.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
mean, I think that environment being so inviting to, like, oh, we're already trying something new. We don't know much about China, and then we're meeting somebody from a place that you have no idea about. You couldn't point on a map, probably. You know, I would have done the bad thing of pointing generally at Eastern Europe. I don't know if you could point Madagascar on the map at the time. But yeah, I think to go from that to how she was speaking about it there's this breadth of experience that we went through, and also this depth of experience of just like so many of the quirks about our different cultures, but the fact that we still end up in a place where we always want to learn more, where we're always connecting so much about it. Yeah, it feels very special, and I think it's also built the foundation for how we're working now with Podvision. It really has, in terms of our communication, like trying to communicate a word you have in Malagasy that you don't know how to translate in French or in English, and you're trying to tell her, or her having a word in Romanian that she just can't get out here, right? And like having all of these different aspects of it that you've done for years, and then eventually start to, communicate about how we're running our agency and like, yeah.
And we created our own form of communication because you really have to, you really have to figure out how to get past those challenges, especially expressing yourself and expressing that part of your life and just your soul that's from home. I mean, part of me is very sad that, he won't get to experience that and I won't get to experience that from him. That's a very important part. And I don't think I can if I'm not from Madagascar, if I don't speak Malagasy like that, if I don't have those childhood memories or whatever it is. But we have created our own style of communication. We have created our own kind of humor. We have created just our own life and our own culture that blends those different things.
Yes. And I was just thinking, I've never met a couple that is so international, so many languages like you both have. And not only you're not speaking each other's mother tongue in your relationship, with which I never thought of that. Like you just said, you're creating your own ways as in your second or third language in your
Yeah.
case as well. What is one thing that in your case, from people in Madagascar, and same question for you, Andrea, what is one thing that you're still carrying from that culture today that you're proud of and that you have realized that you have over time?
Really good question. It's kind of hard to pinpoint one thing.
Should I start as you're thinking about it?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I think for me, so I've thought about this question. I had an instinct, maybe you might ask it. And I would say from Romanian culture, there are a lot of things that I have that sometimes help me, sometimes are a little bit of an obstacle. So, for example, in Bucharest, even specifically, people are so conflictual. Being in the States, I definitely stopped being conflictual. The culture there is so different. And so coming back here, sometimes people are like, you're too polite, if they're trying to start a fight or something. But I still have some of that fire in me. And I think also another thing is kind of the DIY-ness a little bit and the perseverance of Romanians. I think wherever you would drop a Romanian in this world, they would just figure it out, right? Might feel however they will feel, but they will find the right people. They will come out with the confidence. They will just find a way to make it work. And that's something that I have as well. And just pursuing opportunities, being perseverant and all of that, I'd say that's it for me.
What do you mean with conflictive? Like Romanians are always, challenging each other, or what is
Bucharest
it?
especially, they are.
They really are. They bicker, but they also this is the place where I've seen the most people just sort of like interjecting at each other on the bus, on the subway. They will just like see each other on the street, and maybe something happened between them, or they didn't like something that the other person did, and they will go in and like make
It's
sure
like New
they
York
know.
City, it's that kind of energy where people just don't have time for you and for your nonsense. I think it's a little bit of just capital thing.
And they will say it to your face right there.
Mm.
I like that.
I think, okay, for Madagascar, we Malagasy people, I feel like I was going to say something very similar about resilience and adaptability. Of course, we've got this thing called System D. They've got the same thing here, which is essentially like you figure a solution on the spot, regardless of the resources you have, and you're going to try to make it work. I think that the twist that we have on it is our ability to be positive, to sort of look at things with the things that we have and with the things that make us happy, and to sort of put a lot of emphasis on those things and how they connect us. So, we put a lot of emphasis on the fact that when you're going through something hard, you're going through it together. And that actually has so much value for us, and that even can make the entire experience be almost positive. Go ahead.
See, that's one of the things that I'm so grateful that I get to learn and that I get to have in our relationship and in the life we're building, because Romania is very different. Again, it might just be Bucharest, but we love to complain. We're just a culture of complainers, and just getting to experience Julian having like such a different take on things is illuminating. It's really intriguing at first and shocking and confusing. Eventually it's illuminating, and it's very inspiring to have that as part of our life.
I love that.
Yeah, on the opposite side, I would just say like what I got from Andrea and Andrea's culture is that energy. We are very positive, and I think that adds to our resilience. We can get for anything, we can find solutions for anything, but also it adds to our complacency in some ways. It's very easy to sort of fall into, hey, things aren't that bad actually, you know? And sometimes you can turn to things like, yeah, we're together, and like we don't actually necessarily have to change this situation because it's not actually that bad. And I think that's amazing. But when it comes to our life where things are changing so much already and things can be scary, this energy to sort of go out and do things and see how it sticks and then sort of be resilient with how it might not stick the best way all the time has been something I took from her that now surprises everyone I know back home, and my family especially, where they just like don't recognize that type of energy.
Right. Yeah. Then I can imagine that's contagious as well for your own future plans. And that's where I want to wrap up a little, where you mentioned where you want to go next. That is scary. And also you mentioned that possibly Madagascar is an option for you to move. How are you thinking about that? Immigrating again, possibly in the future.
It's an ongoing conversation, as you can imagine, and just
Yes.
debate. I mean, I went through a phase where I more so think about this because I think I'm a little bit more just impatient to move again. But now I'm a little bit more settled in. But I had a phase when I was thinking of France for like maybe a year, and I was like, I'm gonna learn French so well, and I'm gonna learn all about the French podcasting industry. And he has family there, and it makes so much sense because it's only one flight away from Romania and one flight away from Madagascar. So it would be actually perfect. Now we're thinking more so, I don't know, we're giving ourselves a little bit more time to think about it and figure it out. We're also not in a rush at all. For me, it'd be great, to be honest, if we kept moving around, but there is definitely a part of me as well that's thinking we were craving stability so much. So no matter how exciting it is, there's a point in which you get tired and you just want to be in one place. But I'm really happy that now, because of this pause that we can take here, like an intentional pause, we also realize that coming from the countries we come from, you have this idea that somewhere else is better, right? Like anywhere else you would be, which honestly, I think is another thing that really had us connect in such a different way. Madagascar and Romania are such different experiences. And we have like different starting points, I would say, but we both have this mindset of where we come from, or we had it at least, where we come from is not it. We just got to look on the outside. And I'm really happy that now we're in a place where, because of this experience of immigrating and experiencing life in so many different places, we can say that's absolutely not true. And we can kind of look at our own countries, our own cultures with a much more objective eye, and seeing all the good and the bad, and knowing that the next place we're going to go, I'm not going to have the expectations of it just fulfilling absolutely all my needs and just having some minor inconveniences. I can have the realistic expectations that there will be some good, there will be some bad.
Yes. The grass
It's
is not
a
always greener, as they say.
No,
But yes.
exactly. Yeah. You got to be there
it's
on the
true.
other side to realize that.
Yes. Oh, yes.
It's true. When thinking about the future, I mean, I fully agree with what she was saying. One thing that's been on my mind a lot, I mean, you mentioned Madagascar earlier, because a lot of the time when we think about where we move, we consider it a lot. Like, hey, at some point in our life, we'd love to live in Madagascar. We never really saw it as a next place necessarily right now, because there's all these places we still want to visit. And like, I think going back to East Asia, or maybe exploring Southeast Asia, going somewhere else would be so fun for me. Like, I would love that. I would love to go to South America. But I think as we've stepped into Podvision, and as we've taken on so much more creative direction and strategy, and it has started to feel like we are contributing so much more than labor to everything that we're doing. And there's another level to this of just being in Romania, with the fact that we don't work in Romania, where I even already feel that. We both come from countries, and like, this is funny, we work in a field where both of our countries are lagging behind. We could not do the work that we do locally, whether that's in Romania or Madagascar. I mean, we're trying, and
I
she's
tried.
doing
Yeah, that's
so
a
much
whole
work.
different conversation. But
She's doing so much work to sort of try and bring some of that energy in and all of that. But in either cases, we decided to embark in a career that does not actually work yet in the way that we are doing it in the countries we're from. And I think there's this there's this distance that I keep on feeling, where I yearn for that, and I want to contribute either in podcasting or in other ways. And yeah, I hope we can do that in the future.
That's so important, that your business is rare, like we said at the beginning, and it has an impact that you rarely see. And not only in the podcasting world, I think like a lot of businesses don't have that international perspective, diversity perspective, and how you can think beyond the walls of a country as well. And to wrap up, what is your vision to someone that is listening and wants to reach out to you? Why should they reach out? And where do you want to take Podvision next together?
One key thing we didn't get to mention here is at our time at agencies, we got to work with incredible brands, big brands. I was lucky enough to touch podcasts with brands like Coca-Cola, for example. It's an honor and it's a great work, but it is a brand on the other side where you are a very small part of whatever effort they're doing. As opposed to, since we started Podvision, we started working with so many more either family businesses, either like entrepreneurs, either like individuals who have like a mission. And we always find ourselves working on podcasts that feel like they have so much value to us, whether that's like mental health, whether that's like schools and teaching, whether that's African history right now. We just started even like talking to people like that, and it's always so cool. I think if it's podcasters who sort of have that type of content, that kind of drive that they have, and they're not yet super comfortable with podcasting as an industry, as a medium, as to all of the opportunities that they can explore with their podcast, I think those are the perfect people to come talk with us, because we want to, first of all, share as much as we can with them, and then hopefully become partners of their podcast and like do take on whatever that we can. So it becomes easier for them to sort of stretch away and reach the audience that they want to.
I'll add to that we are specializing at this point, since we've been working with different clients, and we could notice the trends in the different projects that we're running. We are specializing in podcasts that are launching, podcasts that are rebranding, or podcasts that are sort of plateauing, as I was saying in the beginning, and are just looking for a refresh and for a partner in terms of strategy. So in very practical terms, those are 3 different kind of profiles that we've been dealing with. And I'll bring up again, like, what we believe in, and not to say our values in a corporate way, but genuinely, we really value these things. We value the authenticity. We don't want to work on a podcast for someone who's just trying to get famous themselves, or who is not in it for the right reasons, or is just trying to make a fortune off podcasting, because that's definitely not the first thing you should think of when you're starting a podcast. And second of all, people who are wanting to get joy out of their podcast, or maybe rediscover the joy, right? Maybe you've lost it because you're so tired. You're doing a million things. You're the only one. You're the producer. You're the marketer. You're this and that. So bringing back your enjoyment of the process and letting you actually take advantage of putting all of your energy into the creativity of it, into the content, in all the things that you should be focusing on, and us coming in not just to execute, like Julian said, but to really be there for you as a cheerleader. I really like that word, and I think that's what we're trying to manifest and to be for our podcasters.
Yes. And I think you absolutely accomplished that with all the podcasts that you're supporting. And I'll include here as well what ways people can reach out to you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for having us on. This has been, actually, we got to talk about a lot of things that, we wouldn't have so much lately, because our immigrant experience has always been a core part of how we do things. But as of late, like, you can get really busy building an agency and working with people and trying to care so much. I think the core of having an agency is that you have to care for other people's projects as if they're your own, because that's just basically how you can keep working with people, because then they're happy, but also that is part of our values, and you end up forgetting about yourself a little bit. And so this has been a really, really good experience. Thank you.
So
Yeah.
glad.
Thank you so much. And it was really illuminating because of the questions that you asked. Some of the things, like the nature of the countries we're coming from and how that made us a team and how we were experiencing new things at the same time. I think these are some things that we haven't necessarily talked about before. I mean, we might have. When you're married, you've had the same conversation a million times and you forget about it and you repeat it. But it's really, it's some things that I really don't think we have thought about or talked about before, which is really sweet to have that moment. So we really thank you for having us on and for creating these memories, really, for us.
Of course, it's important to look back. And again, I love your business. I love your newsletter, and I'm excited to see everything that you'll still work on.
Thank you so
both.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
I really love hearing about the balance between Julian's creativity and Andrea's audience strategy. It is rare to find partners who can lean into each other's cultures so deeply while building a global business. If you want to connect with Andrea and Julian, I'll put all their links in the show notes, including where to find Pond Vision and where to join Eurowave's community. This was a very special episode for me. And as always, thank you for listening. I hope to bring more couples into the show and talk about how amazing it is to have a partner that understands your immigration stories and embrace that. I'll see you next time.